Behind a sealed warehouse door, apples picked last autumn sit in air that could kill an unprotected worker. Oxygen has been cut from about 21% to as little as 1 or 2%. Yet the fruit is still alive. It is taking in oxygen, releasing carbon dioxide, and moving very slowly toward softness and decay. Months later, the room will be opened, and those apples may arrive in a supermarket looking newly harvested. Some varieties can remain marketable this way for as long as 10 months. So what is actually being preserved? The apple, the appearance of freshness, or time itself? The answer begins with a fact hidden by every fruit bowl. Picking an apple does not stop its biology. At home, the evidence appears quickly. Leave an apple in a warm kitchen and its skin loses water, its flesh softens, its acids decline, aromas change, and any bruise becomes an opportunity for decay. A refrigerator slows those changes, but it does not normally turn an autumn harvest into next summer's crisp fruit. Wax is sometimes blamed or credited because a polished apple looks protected. Coatings can reduce moisture loss and add shine, but a thin barrier cannot explain 10 months. Nor is every apple in a store that old. Some are sold soon after harvest. Some reach northern markets from southern hemisphere orchards during the northern off-season. The title's supermarket is therefore shorthand. The store is the visible end of a system run by growers, storage operators, packers, researchers, inspectors, and cold chain carriers. This film is about whole, fresh dessert apples, not cider, sauce, dried fruit, or the ancient domestication of the apple tree. Its question is narrower and stranger. How did a seasonal living fruit become a predictable 12-month product? And what had to be controlled, selected, and sometimes sacrificed to make that possible? Before machinery could make winter on demand, people did not treat all apples as interchangeable. Early ripening apples were eaten quickly. Late keeping or winter apples were chosen because they matured slowly and could remain usable in cool storage. Families and growers used cellars, pits, caves, barrels, and carefully ventilated rooms. The goal was practical, not mysterious. Avoid warmth, freezing, bruising, excessive dryness, and one rotten fruit spreading decay through the rest. Under favorable conditions, the right apple might last for months. But the supply still thinned, quality fell, and eventually the orchard calendar won. That older system contained the first part of the modern answer. Storage life belonged partly to the fruit itself. Apples that ripened early generally produced ethylene rapidly and did not keep like slower ripening late-season cultivars. A cellar could protect a good keeper. It could not give every variety the same biological clock. Continuity came from growing several varieties that ripened at different times, then reserving the durable ones for winter. The year was managed by diversity and judgment, not by making one apple available indefinitely. When the fresh supply failed, the harvest did not necessarily disappear. Apples could be pressed, fermented, dried, cooked, or turned into preserves. Those methods saved food by changing its form. The industrial ambition was harder. Keep the fruit recognizably raw, juicy, and crisp without canning it or freezing it solid. That distinction explains why an old cellar and a modern atmosphere room belong to the same story. Both try to delay transformation rather than complete it, but only one could make whole fresh apples behave like dependable inventory. As cities grew, another problem became urgent. Fruit had to survive not only time, but distance. Commercial apple barns used thick walls, ventilation, favorable sites, and sometimes stored ice to extend the market season. One surviving West Virginia apple barn, built in 1897, was designed around air currents, its riverside location, and ice. It represents a halfway technology, larger and more deliberate than a household cellar, but still dependent on weather, insulation, and a finite cold reserve. Railways changed the geography of food. Experiments with ice-cooled rail cars began in the United States during the 19th century, and by the late 1890s, refrigerated shipment of perishables had become a large business. Ice bunkers at the ends of an insulated car cooled the load. Trackside icing stations and coordinated crews kept the journey moving. For growers, that meant an orchard could serve distant cities. For shoppers, fresh produce no longer had to come from the nearest growing district. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden systems behind ordinary food, subscribe. The next familiar ingredient may have an equally unexpected past. But refrigerated transport solved the wrong half of the 10-month puzzle. It could carry an apple farther before it spoiled. It could not make one annual harvest wait in good condition until the next harvest approached. A train was a moving race against deterioration. Even a mechanically refrigerated warehouse mainly slowed the race. Cold reduces the apple's respiration and many chemical reactions, but the fruit continues to use its reserves. A cold room can delay ripening. It does not switch it off. The apple's age was becoming something industry could manage rather than simply endure. That distinction was the first true breakthrough. The industrial apple did not emerge when people discovered cold. It emerged when cold became reliable enough to expose what cold alone could not do. To bridge the final months, storage operators would have to change something more fundamental than temperature. They would have to change the air the apple was allowed to breathe. An apple removed from its tree is no longer receiving water and sugars from the plant, but its cells remain active. They use oxygen to release energy from stored compounds and give off carbon dioxide, water, and heat. This is respiration. It is not breathing through lungs. Gases diffuse through the skin and small openings in it. Yet the practical result is close enough to the everyday word. A harvested apple consumes oxygen, and the rate at which it does so helps determine how quickly its stored life is spent. Apples also belong to a group called climacteric fruits. As they ripen, respiration rises and ethylene becomes a powerful signal. Ethylene is a naturally produced plant hormone in gaseous form. It helps coordinate changes people recognize as ripening. Texture softens, green background color shifts, acids and aroma compounds change, and the fruit eventually moves towards senescence. Ethylene can stimulate more ethylene production, so once the process gathers momentum, the apple is no longer simply counting days. Its own signal is accelerating the clock. Temperature is one control knob. Lower it and respiration falls, but colder is not an unlimited solution. Apples can freeze, and some cultivars develop chilling-related injuries above their freezing point if held too cold for too long. The correct temperature therefore depends on variety and condition. Humidity must also be high enough to limit water loss, while air movement must carry heat away. A warehouse is already more complicated than a home refrigerator before anyone alters a single gas. The timing of harvest matters just as much. Fruit intended for long storage is generally picked mature enough to complete its development, but before ripening has advanced too far. Pick too late and the apple may already be softening, producing more ethylene, and becoming vulnerable to breakdown. Pick too early and it may keep longer yet never develop satisfactory color, aroma, or flavor. Long storage begins with a narrow compromise in the orchard. Enough maturity to become good food, but enough unfinished biology to survive the months ahead. That is why storage laboratories test more than sweetness. They track firmness, background color, starch conversion, internal ethylene, and other maturity indicators, then define harvest windows for each cultivar and region. Apples from the same block may be directed to immediate sale, medium storage, or long storage according to condition. The fruit that reaches a market in late spring was not necessarily treated like the fruit sold at an orchard stand in September. Its future was partly assigned before it entered a bin. This corrects a tempting picture of the process. Industry does not take any fully ripe apple, place it in a miraculous chamber, and recover it unchanged 10 months later. Storage cannot reverse maturity. It can only slow changes that have not yet happened. That created the scientific challenge. How far could respiration be reduced without crossing the point where the living fruit was damaged? The idea that air affected harvested fruit appeared long before the modern warehouse. In the early 19th century, the French researcher Jacques-Étienne Bérard studied fruit in different atmospheres and recognized that harvested fruit used oxygen and released carbon dioxide. But an observation in a vessel was not yet a commercial system. A storage room had to be cold, sufficiently gas-tight, measurable, and controllable for months. Too much fresh air allowed normal ripening. Too little oxygen pushed the fruit toward fermentation. Excess carbon dioxide could injure the flesh. Systematic experiments in Britain finally joined those variables. Franklin Kidd and Cyril West began refrigerated apple storage work around the end of the First World War, and later investigated mixtures of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. Their work showed that gas storage could suppress ripening beyond what refrigeration achieved alone. A commercial gas storage facility was built near Canterbury in Kent in 1929. The decisive invention was not a new preservative placed on the apple. It was a room engineered as a second atmosphere. In ordinary air, oxygen is about 21%. In a modern controlled atmosphere apple room, it may be reduced to roughly 1 to 3%, depending on cultivar, region, temperature, and the storage plan. Carbon dioxide is also regulated, often above its tiny concentration in normal air, but within limits the particular apple can tolerate. Temperature stays close to the variety's recommended minimum, and humidity helps prevent shriveling. Gas analyzers watch the room. Carbon dioxide scrubbers remove excess. Nitrogen can be used to bring oxygen down quickly. Low oxygen constrains respiration. Cold slows the reactions further. Managed carbon dioxide can add another braking effect. Ethylene production and action are reduced, softening slows, and acids and color can be retained longer. The apple has not been embalmed, frozen, or made dormant. It remains metabolically active, but its rate of change has been pushed far below what it would be in a kitchen. This is the midpoint of the mystery. The industry preserves an apple by building an environment in which biological time passes more slowly. The phrase "controlled atmosphere" matters because simply sealing the door is not enough. Apples themselves keep consuming oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. Left uncorrected, the room can drift beyond safe limits for the fruit. Below its oxygen tolerance, normal respiration gives way increasingly to anaerobic metabolism. Fermentation products and off flavors may appear. Too much carbon dioxide can cause brown flesh, cavities, or damaged skin. The atmosphere that delays senescence lies uncomfortably close to an atmosphere that ruins the crop. Different apples draw that line in different places. Published storage guidance has recommended, for example, oxygen around 1.5 to 2% for Fuji, with carbon dioxide kept very low because the cultivar can be sensitive. Other cultivars tolerate other combinations. Even strains of the same cultivar and fruit grown in different regions may respond differently. 2% oxygen is not a universal recipe. It is a starting point inside a biological control problem. The room is also dangerous to people. Atmospheres near 1 or 2% oxygen are not merely stale. Entering them without appropriate controls and breathing equipment can be fatal. Documented workers have collapsed and died in controlled atmosphere apple rooms. That is why these sealed spaces require confined space procedures, monitoring, warnings, and re-aeration before normal entry. The air that helps an apple spend its reserves slowly cannot support a human worker. This is the image hidden behind a year-round display. Not a supermarket misting system, but a locked industrial chamber that must remain sealed because opening it would change both the fruit's atmosphere and the economics of the room. Once the apples return to normal air, their metabolic clock accelerates again. The system has bought time. It has not abolished it. Turning this principle into an industry required more than copying a British gas mixture. Robert Smack at Cornell studied how controlled atmospheres could be adapted to American apples, especially cultivars such as Macintosh, and helped spread the practice through growers, researchers, and storage operators from the 1940s into the 1960s. Rooms had to be sealed, instruments trusted, recommendations adjusted, and large volumes of valuable fruit placed behind a door that could not casually be opened to check the crop. Early rooms often relied on the apple's own respiration to pull oxygen down after sealing. That could take weeks while the fruit continued to ripen. By the 1970s, Rapid CA increasingly used nitrogen flushing and better equipment to establish low oxygen within days. This was not a minor operational improvement. The sooner the atmosphere slowed the fruit, the more of its firmness and storage potential remained. The warehouse had become a race to slow time before the apple's own ethylene system accelerated it. Yet the atmosphere could not rescue careless handling. A bruise is injured tissue, and injured fruit deteriorates differently. Cuts and stem punctures give decay organisms roots into the apple. Slow cooling leaves fruit respiring faster while bins accumulate field heat. A late harvest may store badly even if every gas reading is correct. The 10-month apple therefore depends on a chain of uneventful actions: picking without major damage, rooting it correctly, cooling it, establishing the right atmosphere, and holding conditions steady. The variety table reveals just how conditional up to 10 months really is. In one major USDA storage guide, Gala was listed with a controlled atmosphere potential of roughly 5 to 6 months, Golden Delicious 8 to 10, and Granny Smith 10 to 11 under the stated conditions. Fuji could reach about 12 in that guide, while also carrying warnings about carbon dioxide sensitivity when harvested late. Growing region changes the result. Newer recommendations evolve. The headline describes a demonstrated upper range for some fruit, not the ordinary age of every apple. Storage potential also reshaped what the market rewarded. A commercial apple had to survive harvest, bins, storage, grading, packing, transport, retail handling, and the shopper's kitchen. Firmness became a near universal measure because consumers expect a crisp bite even when other qualities vary by cultivar. Appearance standards favor fruit free from bruises, decay, and many visible blemishes. Color requirements can reward intense, uniform skin. Sorting equipment did not create those preferences, but it made uniform lots easier to sell across a long chain. Here, the story moves beyond preservation. The storage system helped turn harvest into inventory. A room could be assigned an opening date based on cultivar, maturity, treatment, expected quality, and market demand. Apples no longer had to flood the market immediately after picking. Sellers could release rooms over months instead of racing to clear the entire crop. Refrigeration had stretched the season. Controlled atmosphere made the season schedulable. That stability benefited growers and shoppers, but it also favored cultivars and orchard decisions compatible with the system. A variety may taste distinctive, yet soften quickly, bruise easily, or react badly to long storage. Another may keep its crunch and appearance for months. Commercial success is never explained by storage alone. Yield, disease, color, flavor, branding, and consumer demand all matter. But storability became one powerful filter. The year-round apple was not simply a preserved version of orchard diversity, it was partly a product of selection for the journey. When a room is finally opened, the apples do not travel directly from darkness to a display table. They return to normal air, and the clock speeds up. Bins move to packing lines where fruit may be washed, sorted for size, color, condition, and defects, and sometimes given an approved edible coating. That coating can reduce water loss and improve gloss. It helps during distribution, but it is the finishing layer, not the 10-month engine. Most of the biological delay has already happened in cold, low-oxygen storage. The packer now has a different problem. Preserve the time already purchased. Warm fruit respires faster. Long delays, rough handling, and breaks in refrigeration consume the remaining margin. Cold trucks, distribution centers, back rooms, and retail turnover become the final links. A home refrigerator can continue slowing the apple, but the controlled atmosphere is gone. This explains the familiar disappointment of buying a firm apple and finding it soft a week or two later. Its visible life in the kitchen may be the short final chapter of a much longer managed life. It also explains why fresh is a slippery word. In ordinary shopping language, fresh usually distinguishes a whole, uncooked apple from canned, dried, frozen, or processed apple products. It does not necessarily mean recently picked. Commercial standards evaluate condition and quality, not an emotional idea of orchard immediacy. A 10-month apple can still be a fresh apple in that market category, while having less aroma than a fruit allowed to ripen further on the tree and eaten soon after harvest. Research and extension guidance acknowledge that trade-off. Long, controlled atmosphere storage can gradually reduce aroma, especially after many months. Fruit selected early within the harvest window may retain texture but begin with less developed varietal flavor than later picked fruit. The system is exceptionally good at protecting crispness, color, acidity, and marketability. It is not guaranteed to preserve every volatile compound that made the apple smell vivid at harvest. This is not evidence that stored apples are fake or unsafe. It is evidence that quality has several dimensions, and they do not all move together. A crisp apple may be old. A fragrant apple may be too ripe for a long supply chain. A blemished local cultivar may offer excellent flavor but fail a visual grade. The industrial achievement was not perfect stasis. It was choosing which qualities had to survive so a mass market could receive a dependable apple every month. By the end of the 20th century, engineers could control temperature, humidity, oxygen, and carbon dioxide with growing precision. But the apple still carried its own messenger, ethylene. The next leap was to interfere not only with the room around the fruit, but with how the fruit perceived that signal. The compound 1-methylcyclopropene, usually shortened to 1-MCP, acts at extremely low concentrations as an inhibitor of ethylene action. Applied as a gas in an enclosed space, it occupies ethylene receptor sites in plant tissue, reducing the fruit's response to ethylene. In the United States, its post-harvest use on food entered commercial practice after federal approval in 2002. For apples, it can slow softening and color change and help fruit retain quality after it leaves controlled atmosphere storage. That last point is crucial. A sealed low-oxygen room protects the fruit while the room remains sealed. Retail life begins after the seal is broken. USDA research found that 1-MCP treated apples could stay firm for months longer in controlled atmosphere storage than untreated controls, with benefits that continued for a period after removal. The gas did not make the apple immortal. It extended the useful bridge between warehouse, transport, shelf, and home, the very stretch where normal oxygen returns and the old clock resumes. Once again, more control produced new risks rather than a universal formula. Cultivars respond differently to 1-MCP. The treatment can slow aroma development as well as softening, and in some storage combinations, it can increase susceptibility to carbon dioxide injury. Maturity, Dose, exposure, temperature, and atmosphere interact. The modern apple system became powerful by recognizing these differences, not by discovering one chemical that worked identically on every fruit. The newest form of controlled atmosphere goes even further. Traditional CA holds a preset oxygen range based on previous research. Dynamic controlled atmosphere, or DCA, adjusts conditions according to the fruit's current response. Some systems monitor chlorophyll fluorescence from the apple skin. Others track the ratio of carbon dioxide produced to oxygen consumed, or detect products associated with low oxygen stress. The aim is to approach the lowest safe oxygen level without pushing the crop into damaging fermentation. In effect, the storage room begins to listen. If the fruit shows stress, oxygen can be raised. If it remains safely aerobic, the level may be kept near its lower limit, reducing respiration further. This is the second hidden scale of the story. The industry no longer stores apples according only to a calendar and thermometer. It can monitor living tissue and adjust the atmosphere as the crop changes over time. That precision may help control disorders, reduce the need for some post-harvest treatments, and preserve quality. But it cannot erase variation created in the orchard. Weather, crop load, mineral balance, harvest maturity, and growing region still travel into the room inside every bin. A sensor can reveal that apples are under stress. It cannot turn a late-picked, bruised, unsuitable lot into ideal long-storage fruit. Technology has moved closer to the apple's biology, and in doing so has confirmed how much the biology still matters. We can now answer the original question without the comforting fiction that a supermarket simply keeps apples in a very good refrigerator. Some apples reach stores many months after harvest because an entire chain slows their living processes. A suitable cultivar is picked within a carefully judged maturity window, handled to limit injury, cooled, placed in a sealed room, and held in an atmosphere with far less oxygen than normal air. Carbon dioxide, humidity, and temperature are controlled. In some systems, ethylene perception is inhibited, and in newer rooms, the fruit's stress signals help guide the oxygen level. Each part solves a different failure. The cultivar supplies storage potential. Harvest timing preserves it. Cooling reduces respiration. Controlled atmosphere pushes respiration lower. Carbon dioxide management prevents the apples from poisoning themselves. Monitoring keeps the room on the safe side of fermentation. One MCP can slow the ethylene response. The cold chain protects the remaining quality after the room opens. Remove one link, and 10 months quickly becomes a much shorter claim. The system also explains the sameness of the supermarket display. Year-round supply rewards apples that can be graded, stored, transported, and still deliver the firmness and appearance buyers expect. It spreads one harvest across a calendar and allows imports from another hemisphere to fill other gaps. In return, the shopper often loses sight of season, storage age, and some of the diversity that does not travel as easily. Convenience is real. So is the filter that produces it. There is no single honest age for a supermarket apple. It may have left a nearby orchard recently, crossed an ocean from a newer harvest, spent several months in ordinary cold storage, or waited much longer in controlled atmosphere. Up to 10 months is possible for suitable varieties under suitable regimes. It is not a claim about every apple, and marketable does not mean chemically or sensorially identical to the day of picking. Return then to the sealed warehouse door. On one side is ordinary air, safe for workers and fast for ripening. On the other is a cold atmosphere reduced to a thin allowance of oxygen, dangerous for a person but carefully survivable for an apple. The fruit inside is not frozen in time. It is still breathing, still changing, still spending the harvest stored in its cells. Just slowly enough that an apple picked in autumn can wait for a shopper in summer.